Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I wanna go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago and it's gone straight to my head. Wherever I may roam, on land or sea or foam, you can always hear me singing a song. Show me the way to go home.
Hello, Home Slices, and welcome back to Sup Media Reviews. Season 2 is here, and we're kicking things up a notch. We're diving into music, TV, and movies from over 20 years ago, plus we're kicking off a brand new YouTube series that's going to bring even more fun your way. This season is full of fresh reviews, special guests, and plenty of laughs. Ready to jump in? Let's get into this week's episode. What's up, Home Slices? Thanks so much for tuning into Season 2 of Sup Media Reviews. I'm your host, Kiara, and today, the day this episode is being released, is my birthday. Woo woo! It's still spooky season, so I thought it'd be appropriate to celebrate the 50th anniversary of a classic, Jaws. This iconic Steven Spielberg film features Roy Scheider as Brody, Robert Shaw as Quint, and Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper. I'm stoked to discuss this amazing 1975 film, but I cannot do it alone. I clearly was not around 50 years ago, so I had to bring someone who remembers the hype from back in the day. I decided to invite my father to join us. Say hi, Dad.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, so I'm really excited to have my father here on my birthday to talk about this gem. And he's a big movie buff, so we'll get started with a fun fact about the movie. Did you know that Jaws started as a novel? Written by Peter Benchley and published in 1974, the hardback version remained on the bestseller list for 44 weeks. Director Steven Spielberg said that when he first read the novel, he found himself rooting for the shark because the human characters were so unlikable. Over 67 million people in the US went to see this film when it was initially released in 1975, which is just under a third of the country's total population at the time. This made Jaws the first ever summer blockbuster and the highest grossing film in motion picture history up to that time. Dad, did you ever read the novel, and did you know that this was a book before it was the first blockbuster ever?
No, I never read the novel, but I knew it was from a book at some point. And the blockbusters, I think it launched the summer blockbusters. And I did a rabbit hole, a dive on summer releases starting that year. And each year there was something, a major movie that was released in the summer.
Yeah, that sounds right. This is one of the first, or the first summer blockbuster, and it opened a lot of doors film-wise in a lot of different ways. So I actually did not realize that it was a book, and I guess the book was so good, they literally made a movie in like the following year. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that quick. That I didn't know the book had just came, just a year before. I didn't know that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you want to check out Jaws, you can watch it on Netflix as of the recording of this episode. Now, here's the point in the podcast where we talk about personal connection and cultural significance of the film. Now, I personally don't have a strong personal connection to this story. I've only seen it in its entirety once before watching it for this podcast, but I know it made a really big mark on film and our culture overall. From You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat, to the music, to the suspense that it builds, this film is absolutely iconic, and I get it. For instance, in the movie Friday, you can tell that Debo's theme music has been influenced by the Jaws theme music. So if you hear any music that's even similar to it, you know that something ominous is coming. So you can really see how the impact has, permeated every corner of the film world. I'll also say that this film has led to quite a few misconceptions about sharks. So I think it's really interesting how it's impacted our overall attitude towards sharks, and it's just a movie. So I think that's really interesting. So Dad, tell me about your personal connection and what you remember about the influence of this film, considering that you were there when all of this was happening.
Yeah, I've got a couple of personal connections there. This might have been one of my first movies I went to as a child. So I was only like 6, and I know it was Mount Cynthia that took us. And I probably shouldn't have been there, but it was it was profoundly impacting, because we used to go to the beach, and there was beaches near New York where I grew up in the summer, And that was something, you know, and that it's northeast, Amity Island up there. I think it's, you know, off the coast of Massachusetts, something like that, where the actual, supposedly it takes place. So that's my connection. I remember going to the theater and being scared, and the music, the opening scene especially. Yeah. And it just being a phenomenon. Even at that young age, I knew everybody was talking about it. And so I couldn't, but now what I can't remember is, so the home video wasn't a thing yet.
Mm-hmm.
So people had to go in. I knew people that went multiple times.
Right.
You know, multiple times to go see it. Because what other choice? I mean, I think they would re-release it in the summer. I wanted to say people would go back and see it. But once home video came along, I'm sure it was a big rental.
Okay.
Even like about I would say 1980 is when videos came along.
Okay. I don't think I considered that folks didn't have home video at the time, so they really only had one choice, but to go back to the movie theater. And I wonder if they took that into account in the 67 million people. Like, was it 67 million tickets that were sold, or is it?
It had to be tickets.
Are they double counting?
Yeah. They just count tickets. So when you said a third of the nation, I'm like, that's kind of high, but
it is.
There was many rewatches.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, Dad, in your research, you actually shared a song with me called Mr. Jaws by an artist named Dickie Goodman. It's a song that includes a technique that Goodman invented called break-in, where you insert sound bites into the song to create this kind of comedic element. It's a precursor to sampling, is what I learned. But in it, Dickie is interviewing the shark and other characters in the film who respond to his questions with song lyrics. It's pretty silly. It reminds me of Weird Al a little bit, but less a cover of a song. Tell me about this song. I had actually never heard of it before.
We actually bought it was a 45 single. I don't know if you remember record players, and you know, you can buy a single, which wasn't a full album, so it was just called it a 45. We played on 45 RPMs, and we had it, and we played it, and your aunt terrorized me with it because at the beginning it has the music in it.
Okay.
It has the dun, 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 yeah, and she would terrorize me with it.
Oh, that's awful.
Right, so that's another wild connection that we have with it. But that's what I remembered, and I really forgot all about the song until we came up on its 50th anniversary, and I was like, oh yeah, this song, and of course YouTube had it, so so we were able to look at it. And it brought back some memories. And did you know any of the songs?
I knew quite a few of the songs. I want to say, I think it included around 10 songs. I probably knew 6 out of the 10. I assume all of them were popular, but it's like, I don't know Rhinestone Cowboy. Like,
See,
I don't know.
That was one of the more popular ones. Yeah, there's a lot of those were one-hit wonders. Some of them, there's probably 2 of them I still to this day, unless I research and I didn't look. I meant to look on it. There was a couple that I was like, I don't know that one. To this day, I don't know that one.
I have the list here. I have it pulled up. They, of course, have the main theme from Jaws. They have Dynamite by Bazooka, Please, Mr. Please by Olivia Newton-John, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You by James Taylor, Why Can't We Be Friends by War, Get Down Tonight by Casey and the Sunshine Band, The Hustle by Van McCoy and Soul City Symphony, Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tennille, Rhinestone Cowboy by Glenn Campbell, One of These Nights by the Eagles, Jive Talkin' by the Bee Gees, I'm Not in Love by 10cc, and Midnight Blue by Melissa Manchester.
See, those last 2 is the 1 to 2. I have no idea.
You don't know I'm Not in Love? I know that one. That's like classic yacht rock.
Oh, yeah. But the rest of them, more or less, yeah. Rhinestone Campbell was a country singer, so that was like a crossover hit.
Okay.
Back then.
Okay. Very Old Town Road. Okay, well, I'm excited to talk about this movie, so let's get into it. Now, the movie opens with that instantly recognizable John Williams score. The soundtrack itself warns the audience that something bad is coming. A small group of teens are hanging out around a bonfire, and 2 flirtatious kids sneak off to go skinny dipping, and the girl runs ahead of her drunk companion, who eventually passes out on the shore. We hear the ominous theme again, then the attack. The girl is pulled under the water, and there is a violent sequence of events where she is being thrashed about in the water, and it's violent in implication, but not graphically shown because of how dark it is. So this is the first attack that sets the movie's tone, and it's clear that we're dealing with a violent animal that remains to be seen. Now, morning comes and we meet Chief Martin Brody. He's a newly transplanted police chief from New York. He's a husband, father of two, and emphatically an outsider in Amity Island's small town hierarchy. Brody's day job is full of petty complaints, little parking disputes, vandalism by fourth graders. It really highlights how dependent the town is on summer tourism because nothing is really popping off in this town otherwise. Now, when the drunk boy reports the young lady, Chrissy or Christine, missing, her washed up remains are found and Brody wants to shut down the beaches out of caution. Instead, he ends up being pressured by Mayor Vaughn and local business leaders who warn him that closing the beaches will ruin the town's economy. Even the medical examiner is maneuvered into softening his ruling on her death or the cause of her death to protect the summer season. Brody is basically ambushed and forced to temper his instincts. But all of that collapses when, on a crowded, sunlit beach day, a little boy named Alex Kittner is attacked while floating on an inflatable. Lots of folks in the town are actually present on the beach, including Brody and his family, and they kind of witness this cruel sight. This second attack is dramatically more graphic. There's a lot of blood. There's more panic with all the people who are there on the beach. And there's this immediate visceral confirmation that something is killing people in the water. But we actually still don't see that it's a shark. So there is still some kind of plausible deniability. The town basically erupts after this, especially since Alex's mother posts a $3,000 reward, which is a significant bounty that amounts to over $18,000 in today's money. And there's a tense town hall meeting that follows. Brody starts to lay out a plan to protect all of, the people of Amity Island, and he wants to close the beaches, but then the mayor limits any shutdown to a single day. And of course, Brody is not on board with that. In the meeting, there's a butthole in the back of the room that scratches on a chalkboard and uses this opportunity to create an offer for the town. He wants to solve the little shark problem for a fee of $10,000, which is over $60,000 in today's money, appealing to the desperate business owners and the town's financial fears. And they're kind of like, thanks, we'll get back to you. At home, Brody is obsessing over shark behavior. He's doing research, and he's really frustrated that the people around the town won't take this threat seriously. His own family remains vulnerable when his son is playing near the water. And it's like, come on now. This setup ends with the island's conflict clearly established. We have public safety versus economic survival, an outsider cop whose authority is undermined by the people in this town, and a community that willfully misreads danger until it's too late. Dad, what do you think about the opening scenes and themes from Jaws? How do you feel about Amity Island and the little shark problem they have?
Yeah, Amity Island, yeah. It's a little vacation spot. It makes a lot of sense. People will come up from the cities to come there, especially if they were promoting the 4th of July weekend. And if you remember, the banner said something about a regatta. Mm-hmm. So like a boat race. So that's a big thing, it looks like. And yeah, they're dependent on that money. It's a summer town. The cop, he's new to the town. Mm-hmm. They mention him that he's been there just as his first summer. And he gets, he's a little dismissive of the town folk and their little problems, but I think it's a great look into a small town and how the filmmaker made it, I read that there's been documentaries and there was a lot of town folk in the movie with lines. So
okay.
When they have them saying things, it's really authentic and I think it's pretty good, but I think they did a good job showing that the town itself and that small town, beach town kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And how the politics that's their bread and butter, and they were willing to keep it on the down low so they could get their season in. But Shark wasn't having that.
Of course. I mean, the shark was happy. He was like, yeah.
Yeah.
July 4th.
Yeah. And what's funny is you mentioned how dark it was and you really couldn't see it. I believe that wasn't by design. It was out of necessity because they were having so much trouble with the mechanical shark. And that was one of the first behind the scenes things that came up, how this movie was a nightmare to make because the shark kept breaking down. So inadvertently, he invented where less is more. Mm-hmm. It had to have a build up and you finally see the whole shark later on.
Yeah.
And the suspense of, it's a shark, but you just don't know the scope and everything. Oh, one more thing. We have our familiar trope. Kids doing bad things.
Thank you. I was going to bring it up.
Yeah, because they were I think they were smoking weed too. I think they were smoking a little marijuana. I think that's what
they were smoking something. Sure. I thought it was a cigarette, but it's possible. Yes.
They kept making a point of showing him doing it while he was drinking the beer. Nobody drinks. Who smokes with one hand, drinks with the other. So they were kind of making it a point. I'm like, okay, we get it. He's, so we had to have that, and then they go off. And I thought, when I was a little kid, I thought there was a little love scene before they got in the water. I didn't see that in the version I saw recently. I might be wrong, but as a kid, I saw so much stuff I shouldn't have seen. So it might have melded with something, but I thought there was a little love scene on the beach. But the last version, it didn't even...
They just hopped in the water. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought up that trope of the immoral teens that get what's coming to them, apparently. But my thoughts on these opening scenes of the film is really that, like, the townsfolk come across as very insufferable and stubborn to me. Amity Island is kind of its own character in this movie. It's like a little sleepy town that comes alive during the summer. There are cliques. There's virtually no crime. These people live a good life. The mayor and some of the townsfolk come across as bullies, and they prioritize profits over people when, this shark situation comes up. And it's more than just denial. It's like this willful, like being able to risk people dying in order to keep money coming in. And it's like, I totally understand that you have a short season, but people's safety is more important than that. And it just annoyed me a lot. Now, Brody, I find his character very interesting to me. You had mentioned earlier that you felt like he was being very dismissive of like the small town things. I think he was only dismissive because he was really worried about the shark situation and how dire that was in the moment. Overall, I felt like he was very perceptive and intelligent, but he didn't have the authority. He wasn't empowered to really do his job. He came across as a really caring person who was concerned about his family and the community. And I feel like personally, in a different world, Brody could have been played by a woman because of the type of character that he had and the care for the community, as well as the fact that people didn't want to listen to him. Like, I actually think Brody could have been played by a woman, but not necessarily in 1975.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think that it's interesting that this movie also depicts a child dying, which is quite taboo in American horror. So that was really interesting to me. And rightfully so, everything that happens with that child dying, Alex, is a bigger catalyst that sets the rest of the action in motion. So we have a teenage girl who's skinny dipping. Maybe we don't care as much. She's obviously been ravaged by a shark, but maybe we don't care as much. But then in broad daylight, everyone witnesses this child being killed. And now it's, really a big deal. Now, overall, while I find the townspeople annoying and I think the mayor is a bully, it's one of these situations where it's like some people just need to touch the stove to know it's hot. And things just go downhill from here. And essentially, this town is going to F around and find out. So.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I think the mayor, he was one of the term sleazebag started coming into play in culture. Yeah, he's out of a bit of a sleazebag. Yeah, and he doesn't get his comeuppance, but he feels it later on. Yeah. I think it really hit him. But yeah, the town, I agree with you. The town is a character, and then making a point with the ferry, I thought that was a really neat. Make sure you're saying it's an island, and be curious. Well, how do they get around? And is there a bridge? And so there might have been a bridge, and they showed all that, and that was good continuity to show this is their life. Inside the people, they show the car ferries, they show the big ferries with all the people on it on the 4th. But I want to comment on their house, on Brody's house. That was a cool location. Yeah, I was just noticing that the views, and it was a nice spot. So
they were right on the water.
Yeah, so it got some appeal because he was a New York City cop that comes up later on, and him and his wife have a good dynamic too.
Yeah, they do. And then 2 cute young boys. They, I didn't really fixate on the house too much, but it is right on the beach. They have their own little private dock. It's cute. It's a nice setup. You go from New York City to this nice little coastal town, and it's quiet.
I can see the draw. Yeah. I can see the draw.
For sure. For sure. So, In the aftermath of the boy's death, Amity Island becomes overrun with amateur and maybe even professional fishermen who are chasing that $3,000 reward. Their reckless tactics include things like overcrowded boats, using dynamite, tying your wife's roast to a dock, like silly stuff like that, really highlights the desperation and danger of what's happening. Meanwhile, oceanographer Matt Hooper arrives from the Marine Institute to lend his expertise. After he examines Chrissy's remains, he confirms that the attacks are from a very large shark, much bigger than Brody had anticipated. Now soon, some local fishermen haul in a 13-foot tiger shark. The shark that we see in the movie is actually a real one that was captured in Florida and shipped to the movie set. The town celebrates, posing for photos and clinging to the belief that the crisis is over. But Hooper doubts that it's actually the killer shark. The bite radius doesn't match, and he wants to examine the stomach contents for any human remains. The mayor resists, and he's worried about a gruesome public scene. And this is the first and only time I agree with anything the mayor says in this movie. Like, maybe let's not do it in public, but we should still probably do it in private. Now later, Alex Kintner's grieving mother slaps the taste out of Brody's mouth publicly and blames him for Alex's death in light of Chrissy's death, which I'm assuming was like the day before. Now, while this deepens his guilt, I personally feel like she should have also slapped the mayor and the other local businessmen who basically tied his hands. Now, that night, Hooper visits Brody at home, where we see a tender family moment with Brody and his son, which I thought was really sweet. And then the two men bond over wine, and also Brody's wife is there as well. We find Brody had an experience with drowning as a child and that he actually hates being on the water. We also see how quirky and nerdy Hooper is. He is basically a rich shark nerd, which I think is really interesting. Once they agree that the shark won't be leaving the area anytime soon, they decide to secretly cut open the tiger shark. And when they find no human remains, they basically realize that Hooper was right. Determined, they head out on Hooper's high-tech boat, where he discovers the wreck of a local man, Ben, and he decides to dive beneath the hull, where he finds Ben's body and a great white shark tooth that's lodged in the wood. But unfortunately, he drops the tooth because he's shocked by a jump scare, which is Ben's body. And essentially, the only proof he has is his eyewitness account. So the next day, with no physical evidence, Brody and Hooper fail to sway Mayor Vaughn, who prioritizes the upcoming 4th of July tourism season. Despite added patrols and helicopters, panic erupts when it's a big beach day. People have come in from all over, and some pranksters stage a fake shark sighting. But the real shark soon attacks in the estuary, killing a man right near Brody's son. And for the first time, the shark is kind of fully seen, and we know that it's there for real, and the illusion of safety is destroyed. Now, if you recall, there was a report that the shark from before, the tiger shark, had been caught, so folks kind of came to the island thinking that they were safe. And shaken, Vaughn at the hospital reluctantly authorizes Brody to hire Quint to hunt the shark while simultaneously smoking in the hospital, which is crazy. And 70s. trying to save his own behind, claiming that he was doing what was, in the best interest of the town. Now, Quint, Brody, and Hooper end up setting out on Quint's boat, the Orca, where tensions flare between Quint's rough and war-torn experience versus Hooper's advanced technology and scientific methods. Using harpoons and barrels to track the shark, they finally glimpse its massive size, which leads to Brody's iconic line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." Dad, what do you think about the conflict and the kind of rising tension in the film? We obviously have a town that is in denial, and they're continuing to lose more people because the mayor won't listen, and now the stakes are really high. And then we also kind of get a set of ragtag heroes. What are your thoughts on this part of the movie?
Yeah, I like how they put them together without making it so obvious we're going to put a team together. And they were really 3 different guys all together. And they're going to go try to get this done. And he's putting his fears aside, Brody is, about being on the water and a boat and everything else, just for the sake of the town and to make everybody safe. And I thought that was how they came together was pretty good. It wasn't forced. Everybody had something to bring to the table, even though Quentin didn't believe they did. But I think deep down he knew he needed somebody on there on the boat with him. But yeah, one thing I've seen always stuck with me is when he's the first remains Hooper is evaluating. It makes me giggle every time when well, let's go see the remains of the first victim. And they bring out a little bin of I'm like, I don't know why it tickles me. The remains, when you talk about when you talk about their body, this was a bin that could have held, it held an arm, and he said something about a torso.
A torso.
So I was, so I'm like, as a kid, I just assumed it ate the rest of it. It probably didn't. It probably just fell to the ocean, never came, fell on the floor of the ocean, never came ashore. But there's certain things when you originally see a movie that sticks with you, and that's always made me smile when I saw that. And I like his reactions when he's evaluating the remains. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, it made me think, when they go out on his boat and they go searching and he's got all the high-tech equipment and lights and all that, I didn't know he had a boat. Because when he shows up on the island, he's getting a ride. And so I was like...
He shows up at the dock.
Right. He gets a ride and he gets off the boat. He gets a ride from somebody on a smaller boat. Huh. Yeah. And I said, wait. So... I'm sure there's some explanation, but that I thought, and then I don't know why I thought he was going to tell Brody, I borrowed this from so-and-so, but no, then he starts talking about the equipment and so this is all his stuff. So something that struck me a little strange. Now, a recent rewatch, that's what I thought about. But Hooper played Richard Dreyfuss. This is one of his, I think his first big role. And then he started popping up in Spielberg projects from here on out and getting major roles. He was in a drama before this. Was it The Graduate? No, that's not him. But I know he had more dramatic roles, but he played that role really well. All three of those guys really, all three of those guys are the heroes of our movie. They played really well. And I think, what's his name? Robert Shaw died not too long after this.
He died from a heart attack about 3-ish years after the movie came out. Yeah. Richard is the only one who is still alive of those three. Yeah,
I heard that Brody and Quint in real life, they didn't get along or something. I was hearing about that. Yeah, I read that somewhere, or a documentary. They weren't really fond of one another, but maybe that helped with there was a little angst there, and maybe that helped with it.
The tension.
Yeah, yeah. So you never know. You never know what Spielberg was like. You don't like each other? Okay, well let's play that up a little bit.
Let's use it. Yeah, method acting. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this part of the movie. I feel like, of course, this whole section is the embodiment of like, you should have listened. Right. Like, you had enough information. You didn't need another person to die for you to put 2 and 2 together. I like the fact that Brody is really listening to his instincts, and that Hooper is using his experience to kind of fill in the blanks for people. And I feel like that was enough for the mayor to make a good decision. But unfortunately, everything kind of turns into a circus. We have fishermen who are out of their depths, doing dangerous stuff.
Using dynamite and explosive.
Yes. And almost dying when the dock gets torn apart. The townsfolk kind of breathing a sigh of relief when that first shark gets caught.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something?
And just being... Sure.
You want to hear something dumb? Okay. So I never knew explosives blew up underwater when you lit they still say it. And we use that, me and my friends, we found out that certain fireworks of the larger variety will blow up underwater. So I think that's where we figured that out from. And I don't know, one of my friends, we tried it out at a pond. We said, oh, wow, it really does work. It wasn't dynamite, but it was something bigger than firecracker, but not no dynamite, of course. And it really does work. And it was like, wow, we learned something from a movie.
That's hilarious. Dad, you was just out there doing stuff.
We didn't have video games and internet, so we were out there,
making adventures.
Yes, making adventures.
Exactly. I feel like the young pranksters, while they were very annoying and it was very dangerous for what they did, they also low-key saved some people by getting everybody out of the water a little earlier when the shark arrived. I also think it's interesting about the amount of guilt that Brody is carrying for Alex's death specifically, like even though higher powers forced his hand, there probably were some other things that he could have done because he was actually there on the beach. And he could have told people like, hey, we suspect that someone died in the beach. So if y'all want to hang out and build sandcastles, sure, but I don't advise that you get in the water. Like there probably were other things that he could have done. I think is really interesting. I don't think it's fair that he should carry that burden alone. I also feel like Spielberg balances the like horror elements with tenderness. I really enjoyed that scene where his son was kind of mirroring him. Yeah. I just thought it was really sweet. It was a quiet father-son moment in the middle of all of, the chaos of what's going on in the town. And I thought it was super sweet. And we have another one of those moments that comes up later in the movie too. But I like how Hooper, even though he's rich and spoiled in some way, he comes across as being a little more grounded and down to earth. I find him to be kind of funny. He does have some comic relief. He's quirky. He's curious. He kind of blends being a scientist, but also being down to earth. And it makes him likable. To me, he's the most likable character in the movie. But he stops being relatable when he jumps in the water to investigate that boat when he knows there's a giant shark. Right. On the loose. That just really didn't make any sense. Very reckless. Yeah, it's crazy. The mayor, of course, super annoying, wants 4th of July to be popping, and the tiger shark is good enough for him. It's like, but 2 people died under suspicious circumstances. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Also, the mayor had a southern accent. He didn't sound like he pocked the cod hobbit yard. That was the joke about the accents. Yeah. He had a southern drawl. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me that these townsfolk who are very cliquey would elect an outsider to be their mayor. So I think it's really interesting that he doesn't have a local accent.
Yeah. Maybe they tried to do it and it just came and went. Because I know, now that you say it, I heard it, but then sometimes I didn't hear it. Yeah. I can see what you did there. Actors do that all the time. They say they'll go in and out of that accent. But yeah. Like I said, he was just a sleazebag. That's the only
For sure. And then, of course, we have the scene on July 4th where the beach is packed. I really enjoyed that scene because we're literally halfway through the movie and we still technically haven't seen the shark, which I think is really neat and helps build suspense. I even noticed a little diversity in the crowd on the beach. There was like 1 or 2 black people or black extras, which I was like, that's all you can get in 1975, Yeah.
And I just noticed this last time I watched it too. I said, okay, Yeah. So.
For sure. And so news reporters are there too. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity that they didn't lean into it because, what happens at the beach is really horrifying and it's totally newsworthy. And it would have been nice to see some of the fallout from the bad publicity and the news story. Yeah. And I really wish they would have leaned a little more into the news story. Also, the man who ends up getting killed kind of dies without fanfare. Alex dies and, a bunch of stuff happens.
We get everybody's name. They never say his name, I don't think.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure usually I would think, hey, Bob was out there trying to help us or something, or he was there and he's gone. But I guess nobody really acknowledged it, really. I think they said somebody... They kind of acknowledged, but like I said, they kind of glossed it over, and everybody else got a name and some kind of recognition.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when the shark was approaching, they all fell off their boats for no reason. There was no... Yeah. The boats just kind of fell over.
Yeah. He hit the man's boat. The shark hit the man's boat. I remember that. And then the other kids, they weren't that close, and I was like, why did their boat? The last time I said it, you had to have some kind of peril for the children.
Yeah. The guy's leg falls to the bottom of the pond they were in, and that leg looked really real. I was like, that freaked me out a little bit, actually.
I remember that as a young kid seeing this. Oh, that's gory. I was like, Yeah. But I remember also the son being terrified in the water. He did a good job. That stuck with me for a long time. He did a good job looking scared. And I guess I would have been in shock, too, because it just swam right by him. I guess he was full. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting that shot was, I'm assuming, from the POV of the shark swimming past Brody's son. I thought that was interesting. And of course, we got to talk about Quint. Quint got on my nerves in this movie. He's basically like a 1975 pirate. Yeah. He's very abrasive. He is quite misogynistic. He's demeaning. I don't really care for him, but he is knowledgeable because he is a shark hunter. And right now he's kind of the town's only hope. His rivalry with Hooper is, the street smarts versus book smarts situation. And it creates a lot of good tension for the guys on the boat. And once they're on Quint's boat, the dynamics are really interesting. The film keeps panning over to the compressed air tanks, which is really like burying me for me. Like,
yeah. The foreshadowing, yeah.
And they do it a lot, yeah. We see Brody is really uncomfortable at sea. Quint is kind of throwing his weight around because he's, the captain of the ship. Hooper has his own gadgets and in some cases his own motives, but he also has something to prove. So they each kind of have their own things going on. And then, of course, we get that, scene where the shark finally kind of surfaces out of nowhere. And when they see how big it is, it really is like, you're going to need a bigger boat. And I didn't realize how many times he said it. Like, there were a bunch of times where he was like, hey, we're calling back up and getting a bigger boat.
Right,
and I'm like,
yeah, cool.
Apparently that line was ad-libbed, which I think is interesting considering how iconic it is.
Yeah. That was another jump scare when he says that. I remember everybody jumping in the theater when that happened because I don't think no music led up to it or anything. And it just came up and people freaked out. I remember that. People freaked out. But very well done. And it's swimming by the boat,
Yeah,
so
they
you
got
can
me
just
on
see the
that one.
scale of the boat compared to the shark. That was really good how we did that. It's strange that the ship is named Orca, and Orca is a killer whale. It's another name for a killer whale. And I always thought that was interesting. And later learning that killer whales hunt great whites and for their liver or something, I would read stories. So it was a little amusing that that's what the name of his boat was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a nice little boat. But yeah, the shark was huge. And I think they estimate that it's about 25 feet long. So yeah, I mean, after the shark kind of finally surfaces in full, each man on, the orca responds in a different way. We have Brody, who's really visibly terrified and is like, hey, let's call backup. Quint keeps a cool exterior, but he's prepping harpoons and is even calming down Brody's wife over the radio, which is a weird situation that ends up happening. And then Hooper, he is trying to document the moment and he wants to snap photos and use Brody to pose beside the shark for scale. And Brody is rightfully like, what are you talking about? What is going on? That was crazy.
He wants the scientific facts about the whole encounter, being a researcher and all that.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I mean, the men's different approaches collide as Hooper starts to equip his shark dart and then Quint readies barrels to try to tire the shark out. And they manage to attach the first barrel, but then the shark disappears. And so with a moment of reprieve, the crew gathers for dinner and they start trading scar stories until Quint shares his haunting experience aboard the USS Indianapolis, a story that truly reveals this kind of deep trauma and obsession with sharks. For a brief moment, the three men bond and they show some vulnerability and camaraderie. And it's another one of those sweet moments that's woven into this horror film. What'd you think about that scene?
Iconic. And they say he nailed it. I don't know, it wasn't embellished, but he put his own spin on it. And Steven Spielberg has a knack of doing this in his movies, getting characters together. And it's always kind of like a kitchen or a small spot. And they'll have some in the middle of whatever. I think it happened he did it in Poltergeist. I think he did it in Close Encounters. And it just to bring it all somewhere so you care about these characters. They're really, it's not just a hero running about like, what's his name? Jason Statham on the Meg. Just running around being a hero with one-liners and whatnot. Yeah. But that's Steven Spielberg is just one of the greatest to really bring characters that you care about. E.T. did, he just fabulous with it, but a great scene.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, Quint is not my favorite, but this exposition helps us figure out why he is the way he is. And I think that's like a really good element of storytelling, that even if you don't like a character, if you have the right amount of exposition or backstory, you can still care about them in some form or fashion and understand them more. So I really enjoyed that scene and saw that even though all of these men, maybe they don't like each other or maybe they have a lot of tension, they were able to come together in that moment. So it's actually nice to see. Now, of course, the warmth doesn't last long. The shark ends up attacking the orca and damaging it. And basically, the shark kind of toys with the crew. It forces them to add more barrels onto it. They end up getting up to 3 on it. But each encounter just escalates over time. There's the shark dragging the boat. It's ripping things apart on the ship. It's basically slowly sinking the vessel. And even the engine like blows up or something at one point too. Brody is basically deciding that they should call for help. But Quint, who clearly has PTSD and has bloodlust for the biggest trophy of his career, ends up smashing the radio. And he's really determined to kill the shark himself. I thought that that was crazy.
Yes, it was.
That was nuts.
But you see how, like you said, he's got the bloodlust is a great word. He wants it. It's not going to beat him. And nobody's, coming to rescue me. We're going to do this. And if we all have to die to do it.
It's another time in this movie where people are willing to risk somebody else's lives.
Right. So, but then again, I remember the two, Hooper and Brody, are not natives to that island, and I'm sure there were probably some people on the dock were like, "You're going out with Quint, okay?" Yeah.
You saw how upset his wife was when she left him.
Yeah.
She was like, "What am I supposed to tell the kids?" She was pretty sure he wasn't coming back.
Yeah. That was
Yeah. But of course, when all else fails, they have exhausted a lot of their options. Their final plan is to kind of lower Hooper into a shark cage with a poison dart, basically. But the shark ends up tearing through the cage and attacking Hooper, and Hooper barely escapes, where he hides underwater. And I'm like, this is an appropriate response. Like, he tore through that cage like it was nothing, even though it was technically an anti-shark cage. Right. It just wasn't built for, that shark of that magnitude. Now, we even get a little footage of a real 15-foot great white shark who was tangled in the lines of a shark cage. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. They actually added in some real footage of sharks.
It looked pretty good.
Which I appreciated.
And it looked good.
It did. I agree. Yeah. The attack culminates with the shark basically leaping onto the boat and allowing gravity to pull Quint into its jaws. And we see Quint being murdered by the shark.
Yeah, eaten alive.
Yes. Yeah, basically. Now, Brody, who is the only one left on this sinking ship, ends up stuffing the oxygen tank into the shark's mouth when the shark attacks the boat again. And in the last desperate move, he climbs the sinking mast, fires his rifle, and blows the shark apart with a "smile, you son of a bitch," and the final shot. As the remains sink, Hooper resurfaces. Yay, he's alive. And together, he and Brody paddle back to shore on the barrels, exhausted but alive. So, Dad, what do you think about the kind of climax and conclusion of the film? Is it satisfying for you?
Oh, yeah. One of the best endings ever, I would think. It just, a lot of foreshadowing. When I was little, I didn't notice it as much. But now that I was like, yeah. But it was a great idea. And it wasn't too fantastical in the realm of things, It wasn't like, he threw it up and just, they made it to continue with this. Okay, he did put it in his mouth and then the shark came back with it. It wasn't like he threw it in there and shot it. It was, you still had a little terror about it and you were able to make it happen, but very loved the ending. There was something else happened when Quint got eaten. They made a foreshadowing about the machete. Remember, he used it to cut the lines. And then he snapped in the side of the boat, stuck it there. And then I just noticed last time I watched it, he has it in his hand when he's getting eaten.
Oh,
At a certain point, yeah.
Notice
but
that.
he doesn't, I guess he's supposed to be defending, hitting it, but they didn't really focus on it. So it's not there the whole time. It's maybe there in a couple quick shots. So I'm assuming they were probably, will have him go down swinging. Like, remember, Brody had a spear he was stabbing it with at some point. And then everybody was getting their shots in, rifles or what have you. So that was his way of fighting back. They've always got to show a hero going up against something impossible and going down swinging, for lack of a better term, So, but it was fun to see that. And I never noticed that before.
Yeah, they did all get their licks in some form or fashion. I mean, over time, the goal of those barrels were to weigh down the shark or like stop the shark from going under.
Right. It took me forever to figure out. I'm going to tell you how many times I rewatched it because I never understood that. I said, well, let's let them know where it is at first. That's what I thought. So
that is one aspect of it.
Yeah, but then I was like, oh, okay. I don't know why it took me so long to figure out he can't stay under if these barrels keep bringing him up.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that too. I think it also was very clever because you mentioned how much of a hard time they were having with the mechanical shark. The barrels symbolize that the shark is near without us actually having to see it.
Right.
So I think that's really, really clever and convenient and masterful, basically.
Right. Yeah, it really was. Yeah. It just, whenever you saw the barrels come, oh, here it comes. But it always was different. A little different. He came one time when he was striking the boat, we never saw it. When he made the boat start leaking, the boat was just coming apart. And I was like, oh, he's just going to sink and eat him. But the boat was tough. I give the boat its props.
Yes. It was. Yeah. Well, I love a movie with a happy ending. I feel like the climax and conclusion of this movie, it's really like the last third of the movie, and it's action-packed for me. Like, Quint's USS Indianapolis monologue is, of course, a real moment of vulnerability and humanity. And even though he gets the date wrong when it sank, it still is a powerful story. It helps us understand more about his character and eventually why he ends up smashing the radio like a crazy person. We also see that like the shark isn't just a monster. It's intelligent. It's almost playful. And it's like flipping this hunter-prey dynamic. It's like, you all think you're hunting me and now I'm hunting you. And we don't get an answer to this, Dad, but I'm curious if you have any theories about why this shark is so special. Why is it this big? Why does it have this above average intelligence?
That I don't know. I just think it's a monster that caught the right area at the right time of year. And what do you call that? A comedy of
errors?
Or misfortunes or more, it all, maybe they talk about the temperature of water attracting sharks. Maybe that was a hot summer on record. I'm sure maybe the book might go into it a little bit. Maybe. It sounds like something a book would have, but he's used Steven Spielberg's, one of his earlier movies was called The Duel, about a truck that's hunting this guy on the highway. And it's basically Jaws. It's a demon-inspired truck with a driverless truck. So, me and somebody were talking about that the other day, that this is like a little precursor to the Jaws. And then they say the alien is like Jaws in space. I've heard that theory.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then there's another movie by John Carpenter, one of his first movie. It was a space movie. It's kind of like Aliens, but also a monster hunting people. Okay. And then they've got to hunt it or something like that. So, people borrow from each other and, but this was still masterful. It just classic all the way around.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like that's not an explanation we get. It's just something that exists. Whereas like another shark movie, one that I actually really enjoy and is super fun and campy for me is Deep Blue Sea. And they explain that the sharks are terrorizing them because they've injected human DNA into their brains and now their intelligence has skyrocketed, right? And so it's like, but what's so special about this shark? And we don't get an explanation, but I think it's a fun kind of, hypothetical to think about.
Right, and for us to discuss, so.
Yeah. Look, the animatronic shark is not doing it for me, personally. Like, I guess for 1975, it's probably really impressive. But today, it just looks stiff and lifeless, especially compared to, like, the shark footage, the real shark footage that they showed. Yeah. Like, sharks are, while they, like, appear cold, they're still very spirited animals. And that animatronic shark does not have spirit. So that really kind of took me out of it a little bit. The other thing is that sharks are actually really good jumpers out of the water. They can jump out of water like quite high to catch prey. And this shark just kind of fell flat because it didn't do any of the, extraordinary surfacing that we've seen before. So,
but if it was such a problem with the shark, the budget went way over and the producers came out to the location worried about the money and what was going on. And like they said, it was a miracle that they were able to pull it off. Because it was that much of a problem.
That sounds right.
And as growing up, what effects did we have back with practical effects? That was good to us. So seeing it,
Right.
But, you can see it now and you'd be like, yeah. But the necessity of it, not being able to use it that much, made it even more suspenseful.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I agree. Another thing is I feel like Quint's death kind of qualifies for that similar horror trope about who deserves to die. Quint being such a polarizing character, him being the only one of the, three guys on the ship to actually be killed by the shark makes sense. And it's like, that's acceptable to the audience. Like, we were willing to sacrifice him to get the outcome that we wanted. And then, of course, Brody's final shot with the oxygen tank is one of the most iconic endings in all of film history. And of course, has influenced later films. Deep Blue Sea actually had, something similar happen in the movie as well. And so it's kind of a big deal. So yeah, it's a great movie, a great ending. And, it makes sense to me why this movie has stood the test of time. So yeah, at the end of every review, we ask the same question. Does it hold up today? And is it worth a rewatch? Dad, what do you think?
I think I'm a little predisposed because, it was such an iconic movie from in my childhood. So I think it holds up as far as the suspense. And if you really look at the filmmaking and the storytelling and the character development and the scenery, the setting, and the music, and the filmmaking, it just holds up on that level if you're a moviegoer. But like you said, if you're coming in and seeing the shark effect, that doesn't hold up. But everything else, I think, overrides it. And, it just makes it worth. I mean, this movie kept people from going to the beach, Kiara. For years. People were scared to go to the beach. And to this day, there's people that don't want to go on the beach because of this movie. Go in the water. It had such an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. I mean, for me, I think this movie is definitely worth a rewatch and that it pretty much holds up today. While some moments were a little slow in the movie, and I feel like this movie could actually be cut down to like an hour 45 or, hour 30 minutes, I was entertained the whole way through and even experienced a jump scare or two, like even 50 years later. So I really appreciated the suspense. I appreciated the music. The acting was really good. The story was great. And I find a lot of times not every time, but a lot of times if a movie is adapted from a book, it's really good and the story ties together better. So I felt like that was indicative of this movie as well. There were characters that I hated. There were characters that I really liked. There were tender moments that paused the horror elements and humanized the characters. I feel like the movie is really well-rounded in that it has a happy ending that works for me and makes it worth a rewatch. As far as it holding up today, it pretty much does. Generally, this movie doesn't have a lot of offensive elements, which I think is kind of impressive for 1975.
Impressive. When I rewatched it, I was like, I'm trying to remember. But I said it wasn't that, wasn't that bad. There wasn't stereotypes. There wasn't gratuitous nudity. There was no cringe. I mean, yeah, I thought it did pretty good for 1975.
Yeah, I think so too. I do feel like there was like some blatant misogyny with Quint and that you're really hard pressed to find a person of color. So it might be one of those things where it's like, yeah, they couldn't be racist because there's no black people in it. Like, so there is some element of that, like the lack of diversity. But I chalk that up to being like a function of the times, kind of like,
right. And you got to know that area up too. That's
exactly. Yes. If you're going to travel, you have to have a certain amount of money and we, recognize wealth disparity and all of that stuff too.
Right. And then just the area, there was no culture of nobody else, living up that way. And then black people don't go to the beach that much anyway. Not then, not back then, and not up there. So.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like it also sucks that sharks got such a bad rap from this movie. Like,
yeah, they did.
Even though the film pretty obviously distinguishes this monster from other normal sharks, like we recognize that this shark is way bigger than other sharks and that its behavior, he's not behaving like any other shark that Quint encountered. Our minds still connect this one crazy, intelligent, large, shark to all sharks. And sharks really don't behave this way. Like you said, there are people who still don't go to the beach because of how impacted they were by this film. So I feel like it's pretty much misinformation, but I feel like it's interesting. And I wonder how many people were inspired to go into like marine biology because of this movie. Like maybe it kind of helps balance things out. Maybe people were inspired by Hooper and wanted to learn more about, the ocean.
Yeah, that was interesting facts he dropped and knowledge. And I was curious, this kid, wow, that's all they do is, what do you say, hunt, eat, and make baby sharks or something like that. Yeah. So he talked about different kinds of sharks and the waters where they are and coming up from the coast. I believe he's coming up from the warm waters of, remember the Louisiana license plate. That always remember that. That's very iconic to me. That stands out. When he pulled the license, it's like, the sharks eat metal? So, yeah.
They'll eat anything, yeah. And now we have Shark Week. I think Shark Week is trying to just undo all of the misinformation from Jaws.
I know, right? Yeah.
So, yeah.
When Shark Week, I didn't know the sharks leaped out of the water until Shark Week
yes.
showed that. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah, they are quite the athletes, yes. I think where the movie really doesn't hold up for me, and I talked about this a little earlier, is the animatronic shark. I think that's the part where it really doesn't hold up that much. But it's probably world-class effects for 1975, but yeah, it doesn't work for me. So that's the biggest thing that took me out of the action a little bit. But if you can get past the bad animatronics and Quint's insufferable attitude and the lack of diversity and the shark slander, this movie is great. And you should be, you should really check it out in honor of its
Shark
50th
slander.
anniversary. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Speaking of 50th anniversary, there's a documentary that came out this summer. Steven Spielberg's in it. It's called Jaws at 50, something like that. It'd be easy to find. I recommend it. Anybody listening to check that out. It was pretty cool, especially if you just watched the movie. It's fresh in your mind. But now Jaws had some ripoffs. I don't know if you know this. So after Jaws,
Ripoffs, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a movie called Orca. It was about a killer whale.
I love that movie. It is so funny.
It's a good movie. Yeah,
yes, it's about the revenge, right? Like the orca takes revenge on a fisherman. Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So that was pretty much a ripoff. It was a movie, Piranha. It wasn't a shark, but it was something in the water. That. One of my favorite B-horror movies of all time. And a movie called The Deep. The Deep had Moray Eel in it, but it was more about a heist, but they were scuba diving. But it wasn't, the antagonist was the thieves. So I'm trying to remember, there was bad guys, but there was barracudas and something else that were a problem. But it wasn't the main, the main objective or the main enemy in this. But
yeah, kind of like the hippos in Congo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Congo, the main villain were the crazy white gorilla type things. Yeah. But there's a scene in Congo where they're on their way to whatever they're looking for and they're attacked by hippos in the river. It's a crazy scene. I actually really love that scene. But like they're kind of the B villains.
Right, yeah. So The Deep, Orca, Piranha, and the Meg, the newer one. And it's just fantastical in it. And we can't forget Sharknado. We can't forget Sharknado. In the sequels.
Deep Blue Sea.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I love Deep Blue Sea. It's so funny.
Deep Blue Sea. Yeah, so Deep Blue Sea is pretty hilarious. I remember
Did you watch any of the sequels?
Deep Blue Sea has sequels?
No. Jaws, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Jaws 2 I enjoyed.
Okay.
But the rest of them are awful. Jaws 3 is a 3D one that was horrible. Jaws the Revenge, the son is grown up and he's working at a water park somewhere in Florida, and then the shark, they never explain how the shark finds him and is after him. It's awful. It's awful, but the theme park thing is kind of cool, but it's like a water theme park. He's working at it. The shark gets in there, and it's bananas, but it doesn't make any sense. But Jaws 2, I believe, was worth watching. Some people hate it, but I enjoy it.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. The other Jaws films are not affiliated with Steven Spielberg at all, but I would be interested in checking out at least one of the sequels, so I'll look into it. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about the ratings for Jaws. I don't know if you checked it out, Dad, but can you guess what the critics and the audience rated Jaws on Rotten Tomatoes?
Oh, Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes. What do you think the critics gave it versus the
audience?
I
would say like an 88. For some reason, 88 in the audience, like a 97.
So you think the critics rated it lower?
I think, yeah.
Okay. It's actually kind of the reverse. The critics gave it 97 and the audience gave it 91.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I actually think it's really interesting that the critics rated it higher than the audience and that much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I would probably give it like a 90%. What about you? What would your rating be?
It's way up there. It's like even the colors, even just the colors on the screen pop. And it's not even talking about the blood. It's just it's like a 98 to me.
Okay. 98.
You know.
Okay. I get it. Look, fix the animatronic shark and we can get it to like a 94, like maybe for me. But yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening to our 50th anniversary review of Jaws here at Sup Media Reviews. I want to say a special thanks to my dad for joining me today. Dad, did you have a good time?
Had a great time. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. See you next time.
Of course, I'm so happy we got a chance to talk about this movie in detail. Listeners, let us know what you think about Jaws. Does it hold up for you? Did you rewatch it recently? Do you agree with the Rotten Tomatoes ratings? Share your thoughts on our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Next week, a special guest will join me for the final spooky season review of the year, where we'll be discussing the very first Final Destination film. You don't want to miss it. Peace out. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Sup Media Reviews. New episodes drop just about every week, and our brand new YouTube series is coming your way. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook so you never miss a thing. Got a movie, album, or show you think we should review? Send it our way. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and just chill till the next episode.